Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. I am Dr. Suresh Badadmat, Professor of Psychiatry, Head of Telemedicine Center, Head of Forensic Psychiatry Services, working at NIMANS, Bangalore. Let's understand what is the prevalence of disability. Why should we study about disability? And defining disability makes a very important discussion about the legislation. Let's look into the world disability prevalence. As per the World Report on Disability, published by World Health Organization in 2011, clearly said that prevalence of disability is 15% across the world. Not only that, it also said that 80% of them live in developing countries. It's very disturbing. At the same time, it also said that in the 15%, 1 in 5 women suffer from disability. 46% of senior citizens, that is, any person above the age of 60, has disability. 46% is almost equivalent to 50%. And also 1 in 10 children have disability. This is how disability in the world scenario or in the world map. See, 15%, 18%, 80% are in developing country. Let's look into the numbers. The total world's population is 7.8 billion. In that, 1 billion population has one or the other disability. That equates to 1 in 7 person has one or the other disability. This is the world scenario on disability prevalence. Let's look into the Indian scenario. In India, at the same time 2011, disability prevalence was done, or else census was done. According to the 2011 census, which is based on the definition of disability from the previous legislation, Persons with Disability Act of 1995, where only 7 disabilities have been taken into consideration. According to that, it is only 2.21% of our population has disability. That equates to 2.6 crore population having disability. And that 41% never married because of disability. This is the scenario in India. Let's understand and define disability. Because as I mentioned earlier, in the legislation 1995, the definition of disability was different and there were only 7 disability. But in the present legislation, it has been very comprehensive, very broad spectrum, including a lot of disabilities or illnesses have been considered under the new legislation. But at the world scenario, what does this disability definition means? According to UNCRPD, that is United Nations Convention on Right to Persons with Disability, clearly defined, disability results from the interaction between persons with impairment and attitudinal and environmental barrier that hinders their full and effective participation in the society on equal basis with others. Please understand, this definition of disability is very comprehensive, very beautifully has been drafted. See, disability means it is the interaction between the impairment on one hand and the attitudinal and physical barrier. So you can understand the physical barrier. That means a person with locomotor disability wants to attend a class, a student attend a class in 3rd floor. Definitely he requires lift and also the ramp to access that place through wheelchair. And if it is not there, that is physical barrier. Not non-availability of lift, non-availability of a ramp or the wheelchair is considered as a physical barrier. So that is on one hand. Now on the other hand, there is something called as attitudinal barrier. Even in spite of having a lift, in spite of having the ramp and also the wheelchair, the hospital administration or the school administration feels that disabled people are good for nothing and we will not give them the seat. We will not give them the equal opportunity. We will not make any reasonable accommodation to make them mainstream in our general population. That attitudinal barrier is the biggest challenge at present for the persons with disability. The physical barrier is on one hand, that somehow we can remove it. But the attitudinal barrier is the one which is very difficult to remove from the minds of the people. According to the UNCRPD, the disability has been defined keeping in terms of it's an evolving concept. It's not a static. Disability means it's once happened, it is remains same? No. It is evolving over a period of time, and also it is dynamic in nature. For example, a person with stroke or paralysis that may have worsened further having a second stroke, or else even by medication there may be an improvement. Hence, the disability is not a static phenomena. It is a dynamic phenomena, and the definition is evolving depending upon our attitudinal barrier, physical barrier and attitudinal barrier. Hence, the definition of disability was moved from the medical domain to social domain. Hence, the reason it is called as biopsychosocial model. Biological in nature, disability either by birth or acquired during the life because of accidents or because of mutation or because of severe stress or various other reasons. Psychological, it's an attitudinal barrier from the society. And also the person with disability has been treated so badly, he feels very inferior to him. So that is psychosocial, psychological. Social is the way the society treats him. Hence, it is not just an impairment. The impairment interacting in the environment defines disability, because they need to be given equal participation in the society, equal opportunity in the society, so that they are mainstreamed, they have been respected as a citizen. Hence, rights of the disability has come into picture. It is no more a charity. It is not you giving or I am giving. They have these rights by birth. Hence, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment in India has taken it up. The Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability has been formed, and a new legislation has been also been drafted. This legislation, what I'm talking about, right to persons with disability, was drafted because India signed UNCRPD at the United Nations, that is United Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. India ratified it on 1st October 2007, and once it has ratified, we need to change our local laws. Our local law was Persons with Disability Act of 1995, which had only 7 disabilities, and we did not meet many of the convention's rights. Hence, we had to change our local law. Hence, a new law was drafted that is called as Rights of Persons with Disability Act of 2016. In this UNCRPD and the new legislation, there has been a paradigm shift from charity to the rights-based, that is social welfare, to a human rights, justiciable rights has been brought in. That means you cannot play around. They need to be given at any cost. Let's discuss about Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. This is also in short form called as RPWD Act 2016. This new legislation repealed the Persons with Disability Act of 1995. In this, the Parliament received the presidential assent on 27 December 2016. It has 102 sections or clauses across 17 chapters. It came into force on 19th April 2017. Central rules has been drafted and notified on 15 June 2017. And further, the disability guidelines were also notified on 5th January 2018. This disability legislation has been taken seriously by the Government of India and made all efforts to provide rights not only based on UNCRPD, enabling legislation with RPWD Act of 2016 came into force. Let's understand under the RPWD Act of 2016, what are the principles for empowerment of persons with disability has been planned. There are 8 different principles have been notified. First and the foremost, respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, including the freedom to make one's own choice and independence of persons. That means this person has equal rights with remaining citizens. That means they have to be treated equal. They have to be treated with the dignity. They have autonomy. They cannot be discriminated. Non-discrimination. Full and effective participation and inclusion in the society. Fourth one is the respect for difference and acceptance of persons with disability as a part of human diversity and humanity. You can't say that he's disabled, we will not take him into our society. No. We have to respect the differences and accept them. That is, we are a liberal country, we are going to accept them, and it is their rights to be part of the society. Equal opportunity, Like any other citizen, they have to be given equal opportunity. If required, one step ahead has been, the government has to go ahead, provide them equal opportunity so that they participate in the mainstream of the society. Accessibility of all the social welfare schemes and equality between men and women, the persons with disability. In fact, disability itself is a, what we call it as a problem in the society. A woman having disability means it is a double disadvantage for the woman with disability. But here now they have clearly said women and men with disability need to be treated equally. Respect for evolving capacities for children with disability, respect for the rights of the children with disability to preserve their identities is very essential. It not only talked about women and men, it also talked about children, which their rights needs to be upheld. So, understanding about the 8 different principles, now let's understand how Right to Persons with Disability Act of 2016 has defined disability. As per the Section 2, yes, persons with disability means long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairments which in interaction with barriers hinders his full and effective participation in society equal with others. See, if you look at the definition, it says long-term. Unfortunately, this long-term also has been used in UNCRPD and it's not been defined. Long-term is at 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, we don't know. The reason being is disability is evolving. It's not constant. Hence, long term is also kept open so that the respective states can define their long term. Many of the states have not defined long term. It is left to the medical and also the society's attitude of disability. One example I can give you is the disability for leprosy cured. The word leprosy cured is there. They are cured. Why should we give disability for them? Leprosy cured, since he had leprosy, our society treats them very badly. We have a very poor attitude to the person who are leprosy cured. Hence, this, what we call it as mental problem the society has with regard to disability has been given full effective participation. Hence, persons with disability means long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairment which in interaction with the barriers, 2 types of barriers, physical and mental, hinders his effective participation in the society. That's we have to understand. Coming to the barrier means, further I told about 2 barriers, physical and the attitudinal barrier. But however, in the same legislation 2C, the barrier means any factor including communicational, cultural, economic, environmental, institutional, political, social, attitudinal or structural factors which hampers the full and effective participation of persons with disability in the society needs to be addressed. So the barrier, especially in India, is not just physical and attitudinal, it is also communicational, cultural, economic, environment and institutional, political, social, attitudinal or structural factors. Hence, barrier has been expanded. This needs to be understood by the person who is going to man or judge the special disability codes which has been formed under this RPWD Act. Hence, please remember, barrier is very essential, not just physical. Moving to that, further, there is also a term called as high support. We know about disability. We discussed about the definition of disability. We know about the benchmark disability, which means a person who has 40% and above disability is called as benchmark disability. There is something called as a person who requires high support for persons with disability, with benchmark disability. That means a high support means a intensive support. It may be physical, psychological and otherwise, which may be required to a person with benchmark disability for daily activities to take up independent and informed decision to access facilities and participating in all areas of life, including education, employment, family and community life and treatment and therapy. Here, the high support, that means the government has gone one step ahead. They will provide support, those who required, especially for benchmark disabilities. So let's understand what is benchmark disability. As per 2R, it means any person not less than 40% of specified disability. So that means any person who has 40 and above will be getting the disability benefit as per the social welfare measures under this act. Further, the number of disability has been increased from 7 to 21. That's very important, you too should understand. 7 was in the previous legislation of Persons with Disability Act of 1995. In this legislation, it has been increased to 21 under the new legislation of Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. Let's look at each of these 21 disabilities. Can you see? Those are the disabilities. 21 has been named. Now we shall take each one of them. Thalassemia. Thalassemia is a blood disorder, especially genetic or hereditary in nature. In this, the formation of hemoglobin, which is there inside the red blood corpuscles, the hemoglobin gene is defective here. Hence, the person will develop thalassemia, and this hemoglobin has a poor capacity to carry oxygen. They develop anemia very fast because since the manufacturing of hemoglobin is defective, it will be removed from the blood very fast, which requires blood transfusion almost monthly for many of these patients. There are various types of thalassemia like alpha, beta, so various depending upon the severity and the genetic inheritance that has been considered as thalassemia, and that has been included in this RPWD Act. Chronic neurological conditions. See, chronic neurological condition starts with stroke. It may be any other kind of severe headache, migraine, epilepsy. So the gamut of neurological conditions which are chronic in nature, which are disabling, especially in the geriatric population, sometimes in the middle age, are also been considered, and it has been kept open so that the neurologist will be able to decide, yes, this person has disability, and they need to be given reasonable accommodation. One example I can give you is 2 days back, that is on 11th of February 2021, Supreme Court of India gave a judgment, especially with regard to writer's cramp, or also called as dystonia, writer's dystonia we call it as. A person with this illness, which is a neurological condition, he will not be able to write. He had applied for scribe to write the exam. None of the examination authority entertained it. Tell that we give scribe only for the blind person. The Supreme Court categorically said that under Right to Persons with Disability Act, and when he has disability which has been issued from various authorities, need to be respected. And it said writer's cramp will be part of chronic neurological condition. What a beautiful judgment the Supreme Court of India has given just 2 to 3 days back. Coming to mental illness. Persons with mental illness go through various disabilities, not only with regard to illness, stigma, discrimination, which is inherently part of the illness, will be lifelong. Hence, mental illness is there. Blindness, which does not require much explanation. Leprosy cured person. Again, here the person who had leprosy, and even the stigma is huge, similar to mental illness. Locomotor disability. That's again because of accident or by birth, the person develops locomotor disability, comes under the RPWD Act. Multiple sclerosis. This is a neurological condition where autoimmune disease is the issue here. Our own immunity attacks the myelin sheath covering the nerves. Hence, the conduction of nerves decreases. The person has various illnesses, various manifestation of symptoms, because this is a disorder which affects both brain and the spinal cord, and any symptoms can be present. It can be presenting from the motor symptoms, sensory symptoms, cognitive symptoms. It's the gamut of syndrome, and it's a chronic in nature, and it's waxing and waning. Many a time it leaves behind the disability. Hemophilia, again, it is a inherited disorder or genetic disorder where a person, whenever there is a cut, usually we bleed and the blood clots on its own. Whereas in hemophilia, the blood clotting doesn't occur. Small cuts, it takes time, but slowly by applying pressure, the clotting occurs. But if there is slightly a bigger cut or internal bleed, the person will die. So hemophilia has been considered as one of the disability. Cerebral palsy. This is again, which there are thousands of reasons for development of cerebral palsy, especially in children. Either it may be antenatal, before birth, during birth, because of the oxygen if they are not taken, then perinatal, and then postnatal if there is an infection that also can cause various cerebral palsy, including nutritional causes. So cerebral palsy is lifelong. There are different types of cerebral palsy, rigid or spastic cerebral palsy or flaccid cerebral palsy. Depending upon the type of neuronal involvement, the manifestation occurs. Sickle cell disease. This is again a blood disorder where involvement of red blood corpuscles involving hemoglobin again, where because of the abnormal formation of hemoglobin and having a S type of hemoglobin, the whole hemoglobin itself is been malformed because of mutation or because of genetic cause, and the RBC becomes sickle type, and they're removed from the blood stream very fast. Hence, they require again blood transfusion. But however, this sickle cell disease has severe abdominal pain and various manifestation, including stroke and various other, because depending upon where the congestion of the RBC cell occurs and also where the blood flow stops, depending upon that the manifestation occur. Autism spectrum disorder. This is a disorder in children, especially developmental disorder, where they have a problem in communication. They find it very difficult to express their speech, express their emotion, express their feelings, and also they have a difficulty in understanding the feelings of others. Not only that, they have also difficulty in speech, and they find it very difficult to be in the social situation. They'll be withdrawn, aloof, they have a self-absorbed behavior. Autism spectrum disorder is again by birth, almost by the age of 1.5 to 2 years, the diagnosis can be made, but however, it's a lifetime diagnosis. It's a developmental disorder. Coming to the intellectual disability, this is earlier diagnosis as mental retardation. However, various other gamut of intellectual disability has been brought in here, or the developmental disability has brought in here. Coming to the acid attack victims or the survivors, here again, the person who had thrown acid on a lady, of course he is punishable, but at the same time, he has done it and gone. Unfortunately, the society looks their disfigurement very badly. And the person with acid attack survivors go through humiliation. Many a time our own society will humiliate them. They do not get any job or any education. They will be discriminated. And there have been an amazing movie has been made as Chapak by one of the best actresses, Deepika Padukone, which clearly brings out the discrimination, the way the society treats them. And many a time, these acid attack survivors requires 20 to 30 cosmetic surgery just to accommodate the way the society want to be looked at them. See, imagine, just one surgery, you find it very difficult. They have to undergo 20 to 30 surgeries. Nobody even bothers about it, but anyhow, the government of India has brought them under the UNCRPD. That is Right to Persons with Disability Act. Muscular dystrophy. This is again, the problem is a genetic disorder or because of mutation. The muscle mass goes on atrophied and the person goes into paralysis kind of mode. There are more than 30 different types of muscular dystrophies there, where muscle formation, dystrophin, basically one of the gene becomes inactive or mutated depending upon where the muscles are involved, at what age, at what part of the body is involved. The diagnosis has been made. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is one of the commonest, which is occurring in male, but however, this is a disorder. Sometimes it's debilitating, and the disability has been well preserved. Though it is a part of neuromuscular disorder, it has been given a separate entity. Next one is Parkinson's disease. This is again a neurological condition where some of the neurons in substantia nigra goes on degenerating, and the person has difficulty in gait, coordination, muscular rigidity, autonomic instability sometimes, and it's a life threatening. Sometimes they fall when they have a fall, they may sustain an injury. It is usually occurring at the middle age and commonly in the elderly, above the age of 60. and sometimes they require support. The high support is required. Hence, it has been brought under the RPWD Act. Specific learning disabilities. This is, if you had seen the movie Tare Zameen Par, there the boy has problem in arithmetics. Again, specific learning disability is very common. Many times children drop out of the school because they are unable to understand the rules of engagement of language. How Hindi language has to be written or English, they find it very difficult. That is select, and many times you and me have arithmetic problems. We are unable to understand plus, minus, multiplication or division. They're all selective learning disabilities where the person IQ is excellent, but the problem is only in specific area. It is a problem again in neurodevelopmental disorder, speech and language problem, and finally multiple disabilities. Multiple disability means out of this 21, combination of more than 2 or 3 will be considered as multiple disabilities. Coming to low vision, including blindness, hearing impairment, and dwarfism. Dwarfism is one of the important one which many people, the dwarf, have been arguing for their disability because the mainstream society do not accept them. 4 feet 10 inches the criteria they have kept. Below them they'll be given the disability certificate, and of course this is one of the comprehensive inclusion of various disabilities, and also has clearly stated in the law the central government keeps this list, can add or delete the number of disabilities so that it need not go to the parliament for further amendment. So 21 disability is comprehensive. Now moving to the rights of persons with disability, let's understand each one of the section. First and the foremost, section 5, which talks about right to live in the community. Just because one person has disability does not mean he had to be put in the hostel or rehabilitation center. He has all the right to live in the community. Section 6 talks about protection from cruel, inhuman treatment. Just because a person has mental retardation or mental illness, he cannot be tortured or beaten up. Or because a person has blindness or locomotor disability, you cannot treat them inhumanly or cruelly. Section 7. Protection from abuse, violence, exploitation. And this kind of, if that is there, the person with disability can give a complaint to any executive magistrate or to judicial magistrate, and a free legal aid has to be given under Section 7. This is one of the landmark point has been brought in here. He can approach any of the executive magistrate, and from executive magistrate to judicial magistrate, and free legal aid for persons with disability is very essential. To get justice in this society, especially for persons with disability, they need to fight, because the concept of rights is no more in our society. It has to be fought and brought, because nobody gives rights, although it is by birth. The person with disability has to fight for their rights. Hence, legal aid is required. Coming to Section 8, equal protection and safety in situation of risk, armed conflict, humanitarian agencies, or natural disaster management. Best example I can give you is in the COVID. During COVID management, when the person with disability, they need extra assistance. Imagine a person with disability, locomotor disability, and during the lockdown, he is unable to go outside quickly and buy his requirement, and he needs to move from one place to another. Unless there is an assistance, he cannot do. And during disaster, he need to fight with the normal people for the meager resources. This law clearly says that under Section 8, that persons with disability should be given equal protection and safety like any other citizen. It's one of the best part has been thought by the drafter of this legislation. Section 9. No child with disability shall be separated from his or her parents on the grounds of disability. Just because a child has disability, you cannot separate them from their children, from their parents. That's a beautiful concept has been brought in. Here, either the disability can be considered with the child or because with the parents. And also here specifically says a child with disability. And also vice versa also may old court, especially in the recent, in Mumbai, a child was born to a person with disability, that is mental illness. Her child was given adoption to somebody without even taking her consent. When she recovered from mental illness, by that time, the child was with the foster parents for more than 1.5 years, and they refused to give back the child. And this lady need to go to the court to get her child back. Again, this is one of the landmark decision which has been taken by the High Court of Mumbai, which clearly said that the child belongs to the biological mother. And in this case, she was the person with disability. Coming to the section 10, no person with disability shall be subject to any medical procedure which leads to infertility without his or her free and informed consent. This is a landmark judgment. There is a landmark judgment by the Supreme Court for the section 10. This is Suchitra Srivastava versus Chandigarh Administration 2009. In this case, one of the person with disability, young girl, was sexually abused and raped by at least 7 to 9 people in a hostel. She was under the protection under the government of Chandigarh. One fine day, the warden of the hostel comes to know this person with disability who is having intellectual disability, she is pregnant. When the investigation was done, they came to know including the gatekeeper and the security guards were involved in sexually abusing her. And the government and the court took cognizance and they were punished. But the issue started here is when they wanted to terminate the pregnancy because she was pregnant, and they approached one of the best institute in India, that is PJ Chandigarh, that is Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, was approached, and the medical board was formed. Medical board clearly said that she do not have the concept of motherhood and she cannot understand what is the responsibility of being a mother. Hence, MTP was suggested. But this lady with intellectual disability said that I want to have a child. That was her will. But she could not answer why she wants to have a child, but she insisted that she wants to have a child. On this of her wish and against her consent, the doctor did not go. And hence it was appealed to the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, the discussion occurred on day-to-day basis. And the Supreme Court called the chairman of National Trust Act of Autism and Cerebral Palsy. The chairman of the National Trust Act came and said that we will honor the wish of the person with disability. On that day, the Supreme Court categorically clearly said that person with disability, their rights will be predominant, especially with regard to reproductive rights. And she gave birth to a beautiful female child which is healthy on 2009 December, sorry. And now the child is almost 11-year old, healthy, looking after her mother, studying well, and by courts it is called as pari. This prejudice of the society, it may be judiciary, it may be advocate, it may be doctors who thought that person with intellectual disability should not have children. But she insisted and she gave birth to a live, healthy child, female child. However, the question may be various, but the reproductive rights of the person with disability has to be upheld. Without their consent, the reproductive rights cannot be removed. It may be either temporary or permanent sterilization is not allowed. Coming to rights of persons with disability, coming to section 11. During the voting, access of polling station, technology and disability friendly should be done. And the recent election or polls, every booth had disabled friendly, it was made. Section 12, access to justice. That means access to court, assisting equipment in the court, personals, method, means, technology and documents. So section 12 is very essential. Now, the court has to be disabled friendly, not only with terms of physical, attitudinal, access. It may be documents in Braille. Braille Lipi has to be made available to person with blindness. and wheelchair should be made available in the court. And even a person is hard of hearing, the technology should be enabled so that the person with disability can access justice like any other normal person. Section 13, legal capacity. Legal capacity is equivalent to any other citizen to own or inherit property, movable or immovable property, control their financial affairs, and have access to bank loans, mortgage, and other financial credit. Just because a person is disabled, you cannot remove their rights. Telling that he is disabled, he cannot own the property. It is not so. Person with disability under Section 13 can own any property. Moving to Section 14, it talks about provision of guardianship. There are two types of guardianship has been given: limited guardianship and total guardianship. Before we move to this guardianship, let's discuss about one is rights, another one is proxy decision making. You can see the spectrum, how the decision is made. For example, if a person decides about his own marriage and he goes for love marriage, that is rights-based marriage, rights-based decision making. On the other hand, the family decides for his marriage. That is proxy decision making. But rights of persons with disability acts taken a midway. It is love cum arranged marriage. That means the person with disability will discuss with the family and the family will support him to take his decision. So shared decision making is what it is being taken under the rights of persons with disability. It is not proxy decision is allowed. But however, rights-based decision, completely if a person with disability wants to take his own decision, that is upheld. But if you want to give support, again, the will of the person with disability is to be taken. So in limited guardianship, there are two I told, limited guardianship and the total guardianship. Limited guardianship under Section 14 is clear. It is a joint decision or a shared decision. Will of the person with disability will hold, limited to time, limited to function, limited to a decision and a situation, and operates according to the will of a person with disability. So just because you have got a limited guardianship, you can't overrule the will of a person with disability. And it is limited to a time, limited to a period, it limited to a function or a situation. And the Act clearly says under Section 14, till date, whatever guardianship is given, they're all limited guardianship. If you want total guardianship, it is almost like a proxy decision making. You have to reapply to the district court. Again, the total guardianship means it is a complete support where the person with disability has been given multiple times the limited guardianship and still is unable to take his decision. Then only the total guardianship will hold good, or plenary guardianship will hold good. I can give an example. The plenary guardianship or a total guardianship can be given only when a person with severe disability like intellectual disability, example is mental retardation, severe mental retardation is there and is unable to decide for himself, then only a total guardianship can be given. Otherwise, no. And it has to be certified by the medical authority and or a group of doctors who say this is a permanent disability and it is very severe and is unable to take his decision. It may be financial decision, it may be regarding property, it may be movable, immobile property. Hence, rights of person with disability has moved from proxy decision making to shared decision making, moving towards the rights-based decision making. This is a beautiful concept which is a part of UNCRPD, has been brought into our constitution through rights of persons with disability, telling it is a rights. Moving to the educational rights or educational reservation, all government institution of higher education and other higher education institution receiving aid from the government shall reserve not less than 5%. That means for any institute of higher education needs to provide 5% reservation. You're not playing around here. You can't say that I will not give. It will be contravention of the law. So 5% reservation is a must for educational institution. Coming to right to free education, from the age of 16 to 18, a person with disability, especially children, have a right to free education of the choice of his institution. That's a beautiful section has been brought in under right to education. Moving further, job reservation. In the previous legislation, it was 3%. Now it is 4%. It has been 1% has been given regarding to vision. Second, 1% has been given for hearing, auditory, locomotor disability, acid attack victims, muscular dystrophy, dwarfism, leprosy cured come under 1%. Autism, intellectual disability, SLD, mental illness, and multiple disability comes under 1%. Total 4% has been given for job reservation under the government. So this is how it shows from 3% to 4%. That means 1% more has been given. Although there is a job reservation, unfortunately, if you go to any institution, maybe medical institution, maybe even the administration, unfortunately, people with disability, you don't find them there. The simple reason is attitudinal barrier. You have attitudinal barrier. I also have attitudinal barrier. I feel that a person with a disability may not be able to do that job. In fact, they do good job than the normal people. Moving to section 44, to build any structure to be disabled friendly. That means a time limit was also given. You can say that, sir, I have built a hospital long back, but the government says now, under this law, 5 years time is been given to make it disabled friendly. Otherwise, the license or the registration for whatever business you are doing or whatever purpose you are taken will be cancelled. And also, if you are providing services for persons with disability or rehabilitation, it has to be registered under this section 50. No person shall establish or maintain any institution for persons with disability except with accordance of this legislation and fulfill the minimum norms of the institution. Further, it also says that if a person with disability, especially with regard to mental illness, if they have taken permission under Mental Health Act of 1987 or Mental Health Care Act, they need not do registration under this RPWD Act. And also section 54 clearly says that nothing contained in this chapter or in this legislation shall apply to any institution for persons with disability established or maintained by the central government or state government. That means they need not take registration, but they need to follow the norms of RPWD Act. They cannot say that we don't come under RPWD Act. It is the rights we are talking about. That means they may not take the registration, central and state government. They need not register. Only the private parties will register. But they have to, the government cannot say that we don't come under the RPWD Act. It is only for the purpose of registration. Coming to the certification of specified disabilities, section 56 is very clear. The central government shall notify the guidelines for the purpose of assessing the specified disability. And it has already been notified. So, my dear friends, every person with disability, if they require disability certificate, they are going to approach and you have to honor it. If you don't honor, it is a contravention of the law. And if you are not providing the disability certificate, you have to give in writing why you are not giving them the certificate, what are your reservation needs to be mentioned. There are various authorities have been formed under this RPWD Act for the purpose of implementation of this act. They are central and state advisory boards on disability, both central advisory board for disability, state advisory board for disability is there. Chief commissioner and 2 commissioner for persons with disability needs to be appointed by the central government. Similarly, in the state government, it is a state commissioner for persons with disability. And finally, the district level committee should be formed to implement this RPWD Act. And it has to be constituted by the state government. That means we have at the central level called as Central Advisory Board, which again has chief commissioner and supported by 2 commissioners. Similarly, at the state level, we have state commissioners. And at the district level, we have district level committees. So these are the 4 important legislative body, we can call out what we call it as the statutory bodies have been formed under this legislation. Coming to the disability certification, the rules have been clearly notified. And when a person applies for disability under the Form 4, he shall provide proof of residence through Aadhaar card or any other card and 2 recent passport size photograph, and definitely Aadhaar number or Aadhaar enrollment is required because any social welfare measures, pension will be linked to his bank account. And for the purpose of certification, there is a medical authority or any other notified competent authority, including the state government, decides it can be given to a private medical college, why not it can be given? It can be given to a reputed private institution, and they need to verify the applicant and shall assess the disability and upload to the central server. This is how the disability assessment pro forma looks under a section under the form 4. Various forms have been there. Form number 5, certificate of disability. That is basically for amputation, or it may be complete permanent paralysis of limbs or dwarfism, or in case of blindness. Form number 6, in case of multiple disability. Form number 7, in case of other disabilities, which is not 5 or 6. And form number 8, if you are intimating that you are going to reject the application for disability, you have to give in writing that these are the various forms have been notified under the rules. One another important thing, according to this legislation, you are not going to insult or intimidate a person with disability, because if you call a person by intimidation, by calling them mental, psycho, deaf, dumb, those kinds of words, if you are using, you are bound to be punished, and it is a punishable offense. So, my dear friends, at the same time, Section 91 talks about misuse of disability certificate. Whoever fraudulently avails or attempts to avail any benefit which are given for persons with disability shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend up to 2 years imprisonment with or without fine. And the fine may be up to 2 lakh rupees. So, don't play around by having this disability certificate. Unless you are deserved, don't take this disability certificate. Section 92 also talks about punishment for offenses like a special atrocity for a period term extending up to not less than 6 months have been clearly told, and it may go up to 2 years imprisonment if you are doing any atrocity on persons with disability. Further, the legislation section 84 clearly says a special court should be formed after discussing with Chief Justice of High Court, every High Court, and also a special public prosecutor need to be appointed for the purpose of fighting for the cause of rights of persons with disability. So, special courts and also special public prosecutor, and also the special courts will be dealing with the offenses under this legislation. So, that means all persons with disability, there will be a special courts which usually will be kept so that the accessibility in the ground floor, the accessibility of the persons with disability will be made easily in the special courts. Further, let's discuss about what are the critical appraisal of this RPWD Act. First and the foremost, the number of disabilities have been increased from 7 to 21. Earlier it was 2% as per 2011 census, and it was only 7 disabilities. Now we have 21 disabilities. That means from 2%, it will easily go to 10%. That means we may have somewhere around 13 crore population may requiring disability. This is the approximate number. But however, the census of 2011 said 2% only with regard to 7 disabilities. Now we are talking about 21 disability. Invariably, the prevalence will increase. That means the funding needs to increase. Just example is, even if there are 10 crore population having disability, one or the other, and you have to provide 1,000 rupees as a pension, it will be every month 10,000 crore has to be given, because it's not given, it's their rights to get their benefits. That's what is RPWD Act. This is one of the important swalambancard.gov.in. This is where a person with disability will apply online for disability. Even if he has a disability card already, he has got it, he will take this and go to the nearest medical authority which is recognized by the state government for uploading and getting the UDID, that is unique disability ID, which is mentioned here. So please do visit this swalambancard.gov.in. This is where the various schemes have been mentioned, how to apply for disability has been mentioned, and all persons with disability should know, and all medical fraternity, social fraternity or a psychological or any other health care provider should know about this, and please propagate about this amazing website which has been made by the government for the purpose of providing UDID. UDID is unique disability ID, and various you can see on the just there are how the card has to be applied, how to track your application, and it will be monitored. And whenever the disability card has been given, nobody can duplicate it, because they are clearly they have clearly mentioned how the certification process occurs, and guidelines for issuing, and competent authority has been clearly mentioned. Mandatory specialist has been mentioned. If the specialist is not there, the central government and the state government will come to know. And every month there is a nodal officer for disability in every state who will be monitoring how the district is performing in providing disability certificate. If they are not done, nowadays the various state legal service authority and district legal service authority are asking for the nodal officers of disability why the disability certificates are not given in this district hospital or in this medical college. Those are being questioned. Slowly the disability certificates are increasing, which are valid, which are tagged to their Aadhaar card, so the benefit directly goes to their account. And private establishments, medical establishments can also be given depending upon the state authorities. This is how the UDID card looks. There is clearly a state logo, regional language, the name will be there, and also English language, the name will be there. 18-digit UDID will be given. That is unique for that person, which will be linked to the Aadhaar card, and the percentage of disability will be mentioned there. Date of birth, and also percentage of disability, issuing authority will be clearly mentioned. This is the front side of disability, which has clearly the photograph, Aadhaar card means biometric, so nobody can misuse the UDID, and the person who deserves disability will get this card. And the back side of the disability is, this is how it looks: state ID, Aadhaar number, QR code, so that if anybody applies for any employment purposes or for educational reservation, UDID is must. If you don't have UDID, please go and apply for UDID. You may have disability certificate, but if you don't have UDID card, that means you may not get the benefit. The reason being is, although by on the spirit basis, yes, you are a person with disability. If you don't have UDID card and you have only disability card or disability certificate, and you want to apply for either a job, or it may be employment, or it may be for the purpose of education, there are many people who may produce only the disability certificate without having UDID and without linking it with the Aadhaar card. There is high possibility it may be misused. For the purpose of giving the disability, social welfare disability benefits to the deserved persons, the government has taken this decision. Please apply for UDID, and so that the central server is maintained with the UDID number, and who each person with disability, the percentage of disability is clearly marked. Hence, if a person has applied for any employment, and the employment administration will cross-verify with the UDID, checking whether the person is same or easy fudging the data, especially percentage of disability, will be cross-verified, and the job will be given, or the employment will be given, or the social welfare measure will be given to the person who is deserving. At the same time, my dear friends, to conclude, the RPWD Act is the first step towards mainstreaming the persons with disability. But however, the number of disability has increased from 7 to 21. That means it needs a substantial funding to realize the objectives of this RPWD Act. It's no more a charity, it is a rights. Unfortunately, this legislation also clearly says somewhere that depending upon the state economic condition, unfortunately, this economic condition of the state may disable the rights of the person. That means a state may say, we do not have economic situation where we can grant these rights. That is a serious reservation which I am going to place, because once you call it as a rights, it cannot be bargained. It cannot be say, I don't have economic condition, I will not give you. Although from the state perspective, it may look good, for a person with a disability, it looks very hard. On one hand, you say rights, on the other hand, you say, I don't have money to provide those rights. Substantial funding is required. Political will is required. At the same time, we may remove physical barrier by funding. Attitudinal barrier is the one, my dear friends. You, me, and every citizen should accommodate the person with a disability, provide reasonable accommodation to them. If you are not able to provide 100% accommodation, reasonable accommodation to be given, and a opportunity to express themselves in this society to be given. And if you like this video, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel Suresh Padadmat. Thank you very much for giving your valuable time. Stay safe.